Hey, everybody, and welcome to Common Good Conversations, a podcast creating deeper narratives at the intersection of faith and politics for the common good in West Michigan. My name is Nick Brock, and joining me is Shawn Skinner.
How are we doing today?
Shawn, we are doing. Shawn, today we have the privilege of being in conversation with Doug Pagitt of Vote Common Good. Doug Pagitt is the executive director and one of the founders of Vote Common Good. Doug is an author, pastor, social activist, and I already said this piece, the executive director of Vote Common Good. He's a leading voice for progressive Christianity, and Doug's going to talk with us this morning about immigration along the U.S.-Mexico border, what's going on there, and how we can be involved. And we're going to get to that conversation real short. So before we dive into that, though, Shawn, do you have any things special to say before we dive in?
I didn't have anything prepared, but you did just say, what can we do with everything? Can't we build a wall? Isn't that what we're supposed to do, is build a wall to help with?
Yeah, it was tried. It was, and I think what's real interesting this morning is
tried and attempted.
Doug and Vote Common Good a couple years ago, they had this little piece where they rode along the border wall as much as possible. So instead of me talking about it, let's just dive right in. So Doug, welcome to the program.
A happy Saturday morning to you. Yeah, hey, in 2021, we got on bicycles in San Diego, California at the border wall that's there, separates San Diego from Tijuana and runs, 100 yards or so into the ocean. Started with my back wheel and all of our back wheels in the water in San Diego and rode to St. Augustine, Florida. 3,164 miles. I had the privilege of riding every one of those miles. Some people were able to join for 2,900 miles, 2,800 miles. Some people just 40 miles. Some people 10, 12. We had 100 people, 120 people, something like that, ride with us over the course of those 67 days that it took us to trek cross country. But the purpose of it was to be as close to the border and as close to the coast as we could. So we rode within eye shot of the border whenever possible. And I'll just tell you one amazing thing. You can ride a bicycle from San Diego, California to St. Augustine, Florida on something, that you would call a paved road. It is an absolute amazing accomplishment of what this country has done to build an infrastructure. There are parts of Texas where the paved road was real iffy. It's called chip seal. And if anyone's ever been in the place where you've used chip seal to make a road, it's terrible for biking. And Texas is a lot of the U.S.-Mexico border. So we spent a lot of time in Texas. But yeah, we did this big bike ride to be as close to the border and as close to the stories of the border as we could get. We're making a documentary about the ride and about the people we met and about the story of immigration as it's unfolding on our U.S.-Mexico border.
That sounds like a pretty fun, interesting type of trip.
Yeah, really great. I nearly think about it every day, just how incredibly wonderful it was as a human experience and for the work that we do. It's so great. So if we can figure out a way to do it again, we're going to do that because it was just so good. And the people we met were so refreshing. As it turns out, and I didn't really grasp this or even think about it before we started the ride, the little towns along the U.S.-Mexico border, Yuma, Arizona, Douglas, Arizona, San Diego, California, Laredo, Texas, Del Rio, Texas, Eagle Pass, these little bitty border towns, they are the Ellis Island of our generation. Like the future generations of America that we'll talk about. When did you come? How did you come? How did your ancestors come? They're not primarily coming through boats in the New York harbor. They're coming by foot to the U.S.-Mexico border and from all over the world. And these little towns become the place that plays this Ellis Island role. And when you're there and you're watching the processing happen, you're watching asylum seekers come, you're watching people who have been granted permits, you're meeting people who are coming in the country without permits. These are these stories that are, it's like you're you can almost feel like someone's going to be talking about this 120 years from now. It's really quite a remarkable piece of that whole endeavor.
Yeah. Doug, I want to ask. So I want to ask, like, what put it into your mind to go along the border and to bike it? And I want to contrast it a bit with, there's an elected official might go down to the border for I don't know, a day or a weekend to go see what's happening, and then they'll leave. But what for you like planted the seed is like, okay, I gotta bike this thing and I gotta see these thousands of miles. What was that?
We knew that the conversation around how we manage our U.S.-Mexico border was going to be a significant conversation in culture and politics in the 2022, 2024, 2026, a long time, because Democrats had said they don't want to talk about it, and Republicans have said they do want to talk about it. So we knew right out of the, we knew this was coming. We knew that Donald Trump had made his bona fides for the hard right by being anti-immigrant, by saying that Mexico is sending us their rapists and their murderers and their drug dealers, and that's all that's going on. And had called for the closing of the border, had called for building of a wall in places where there wasn't a wall, and it was Mexico was going to pay for it. And that Republicans had moved so drastically from where they were during the years of the presidency of Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush and George Bush, where immigration was seen as a positive in the Republican Party. It had moved to becoming demagoguery and blaming immigrants for the problems in this country, had sort of gone back to this old school America first, close the borders, let's think about ourselves idea that had been around the Republican Party, but it stayed in the fringes. It had become the primary piece. So we knew it was going to be big in politics. We knew that Democrats didn't want to talk about it, so there wasn't going to be any counter messaging going on to the messaging that we thought was not only bad for politics, but really bad for the story of America, the way that these Republicans are talking about immigrants in the U.S.-Mexico border in particular. And so we knew, okay, somebody's got to talk about this, and we want to talk about it, so we need to get close. And we believe in proximity in our organization, Vote Common Good. We think getting close to the situation and the issues is important. We think personal human contact is the best way for people and human beings to change. I mean, you don't need human contact for everything. You don't need deep empathy and understanding and be inside somebody else's cultural situation to do everything. But if you want to like know and understand and change and develop and grow, it's really your best bet. So we wanted to get close. And then the other thing was I knew just enough about the border to know that from San Diego, the story they're telling in San Diego, California, and the story that they're telling in Brownsville, Texas, in McAllen, Texas, on the other tip, and all the towns in between, they all have a different narrative. They all have a different story. They're in different states. They're managed differently by the states. They're managed differently by Border Patrol. The people who are coming are different. The towns are different. So there was no way to go to one town along the border and say, oh, we understand the border. We've been there. We wanted to go to all of them. So we went to all of them. And when you go by bike, you're going slow, but a little faster than a walk, but you're going slow, and you're feeling all of it. You're smelling it. You're tasting it. You're working it. I mean, to have to pedal, 50, 60, 70, 100 miles a day and then get there and then meet with migrants or meet with people or cross the border into Mexico and be in refugee settlement camps and all this stuff is amazing. So we wanted to get close. We wanted to see all of it. And we wanted to be sure that we were going to have a story that other people could access, because the border, it has this lore in the United States. I think probably both of you have a rock music that plays through your head constantly over the course of the day. And there's just all these songs from the 70s and 80s about the border. I shot a man on the Mexican border, or make a run for the border, or smack that horse in the ass with my last dying gasp. But there's just we think about the border, and we have a story that is lawless. We have a story that it's kind of foreign and dangerous. And we have a story that it's exotic. So we wanted to go find all that out. and see was that the case. And as you can imagine, no, it's not.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, to that point, I wonder too. I mean, you've been paying close attention to this for a while now, and for the past couple of years. And you mentioned kind of going, learning different things or stories at the various border towns. What was most surprising to you as you traveled to these border towns? Like, what was the most surprising thing that you learned, or kind of just shook up what you may have heard in the national media?
That when we would talk to people who live in these towns, and they don't know each other, they've never met each other, right? Just because you live in a border town, along a 1,700-mile stretch, they don't know anybody that lives, 3 states over or anything. But they would all say the same thing. Please tell people that these are great towns, that we're safe, and they should come here. Please tell them to stop slandering border towns. Over and over and over. I mean, people were just heartbroken at the way they know the rest of the country talks about these border towns. And interestingly, the same thing about the coastal towns in Alabama and Florida and Mississippi and Louisiana is incredible. People in those towns, when you live close to the edge of anything, you feel like the rest of the country doesn't understand you. And they're always like, I just wish more people would come here, or they'd come here for more than vacation. I wish they would know our lives. We're Americans too. Like, people along the coast are saying that kind of stuff, because it is true that people kind of get to the outer edges for a whole lot of reasons. It's like, if you've ever been to Alaska or know people that moved to Alaska, people there will be like, people in Alaska, they're out here for a reason, right? They're a long way from the mainland, and there's a lot of stories. Same kind of thing happens on the border. That there's a lot of reasons why people go there, or the coast. And people wanted us to know that they're Americans and that they're part of this, and that they're these great towns. It was just over and over and over. So that was on the U.S. side. Thing we learned on the Mexico side was that there is no legal pathway for most people to come to this country. Like, the fundamental question that Republicans like to ask, and I want it to be the fundamental question that everyone asks, is why don't they come legally? And the reason is because there is not a legal way to come. When a lot of people hear that, they think that's not possible. That's not true. Of course there's a legal way for them to come. Like, okay, let's start talking. How many people do you think can legally come to the United States, in any given year? And you start into these conversations with people about this. Like, what do you assume to be true about our border policies? How do you want them to go? What do you think the process is? And you begin to realize that what so many of us have been told about so many things when it comes to, well, politics and border and everything else, just simply isn't true. So, we learned so much every single day.
Out of all those towns that you passed, going from the west to the east, any chance you could tell us what towns seemed like they were doing it right, and what towns you kind of felt like were doing it wrong, or could do it better?
The towns themselves don't make a determination about how the border's managed. They make a determination about how they're going to respond to how the border's being managed, but they don't have any control over it. The U.S. Customs and Immigration has control over it. There's a 100-mile inland ban. So, like, if you think about a band around the country that goes from the coast or any border. I'm Minnesotan, you guys are Michigan, so you go to the northern Minnesota border, Michigan borders, and 100 miles from that border inland and all the way around the country is managed by Homeland Security. And if they want to, Homeland Security can take over that land, and they have authoritative administrative rights of that land. So if you can see water that's an ocean, or you can see another country from where you're standing, that's under control of U.S. Homeland Security and U.S. Border Patrol. So they determine what happens there. And these little towns, if it's especially along the U.S.-Mexico border, end up having to respond to that. Some of the towns that are doing it well are the towns that have figured out that if they're going to support migrants and support border and customs agents, they have to create nonprofits to do the work that the federal government should be doing. So here's the thing that happens. And if anyone's interested in seeing the little pieces of our documentary, there's a bunch of pieces of this. It's on the We the People Ride. You can go there, the wethepeopleride.org website, and you can see the little clips and all the stuff I'm describing to you. You can see video of it and footage and all this. What happens is that if Border Patrol has people who are legally allowed to be in the country for asylum purposes, so they have a valid asylum claim, they've presented themselves at the border in some way, either come up to a checkpoint, which now the U.S. government prevents them from doing in this very duplicitous way, or they cross a river or cross the desert and they present themselves to a border agent and say, I'm seeking asylum. If that's accepted and they're allowed in the United States while their asylum case is being looked after, all U.S. Border Patrol does is certifies that they should be in the country and then drives them over to a gas station, Stripes gas station, and drops them off. And now they're standing there with a small bag, maybe a couple of kids, and nothing. U.S. Border Patrol policy is to just drop them off. It's insane. And you say to yourself, there's no way that Border Patrol spends billions, $330 billion in 25 years on border security. And when they get 100 or in a year, 1,000 or 3,000 asylum seekers in Del Rio, Texas, they're not just dropping them off at the gas station and saying, hey, you're on your own. Like, okay, we checked your stuff. You're allowed to be in the country. Have at it. And that's exactly what they're doing. Mm-hmm. It's
so then that there in those scenarios, that is where these nonprofits or churches are participating, right? Because there's the infrastructure or the legal structure is not built into the immigration system. So I'm imagining this scenario then, okay, a family shows up at this gas station after being, brought there by the Border Patrol. So they can then walk to wherever on their own and then figure it out.
Yeah.
There might be a church who kind of who swoops in and has to do the good for them, or some other nonprofit. That's how it happens. That's what you're saying, right?
It's amazing. So one of the places is called the Valverde Humanitarian Coalition. Valverde is the name of the county in Del Rio. And Tiffany Burrows and a pastor were asked by Border Patrol and the mayor of the town of Del Rio if they could do something to support the asylum seekers. Do you remember a couple of years ago when there was a big influx of people from Haiti in coming to Del Rio, and there's that famous picture of the Border Patrol agent on the horse with the whip? Okay, little side note. Yeah. Also, what happens is asylum seekers don't decide where they're going to cross. Drug cartels and human trafficking cartels in Mexico decide where they're going to cross. So if you're a migrant of any kind, whether you're seeking asylum or seeking a work permit or going to try to come in the country without authorization, you're not getting to the U.S.-Mexico border without the drug cartels having control of you. And if you try to resist that, you just don't live, or your family doesn't live. It's just, there's no other way. All of these towns on the Mexico side have full functioning human trafficking Mexican drug cartels that are running them. They're running the immigration sides of all this stuff.
I'm assuming they have to do something for the cartel to allow them to go then as well, right?
They pay them roughly $1,500 to $2,000 a person to get across the border, even if they're asylum seekers. And then they have to often, if they're not asylum seekers and they're trying to come to the country without authorization, then they have to pay them in payments over the next couple of years to pay them another $1,500 or $2,000.
And when you say without authorization, you're referencing the not saying authorization from America to come over, but authorization from the
cartels. No, I'm saying if
cartels. Yeah, I wanted to say mob for some reason.
We would call it that. And then, in the U.S., we love to glorify the mob. And we love to, and we love to be, yeah.
But if you say cartel, then it's
when I'm saying authorization, I mean they don't have authorization from the United States to be in the country, so they're going to come in undocumented or without authorization. What some people call illegally entering the country, or they're illegal in the country. So if they're doing that, then they have to pay the cartels extra money, because then the cartels have to sneak them in. When an asylum seeker is coming, an asylum seeker wants Border Patrol to find them. If someone's coming in the country without authorization, they don't want Border Patrol to find them, right? So they're all of the same starting line, they all have the same finish line, and they're approaching it really differently. And there's a lot of talking points that Republicans like to use about this. They talk about apprehensions. Border Patrol has apprehended 3 million people this year. Well, what they consider an apprehension is that when an asylum seeker comes and says, I have a valid claim to be in the United States as an asylum seeker. And that can only happen from certain countries, by the way. You don't get to some Mexican person doesn't just get to say, I want to be in the United States, I'm going to claim asylum. That's what a lot of Republicans say is going on. That's not how it works. But if you're from one of the countries the United States wants to destabilize, Venezuela, Haiti, Colombia, some of these countries, Nicaragua, then they'll allow you to have an asylum claim, because the U.S. grants asylum to those countries, sort of carte blanche. Afghanistan and other ones. So anyway, that's it gets super, super complicated. But an asylum seeker has to have documentation of their threat in their country, documentation of who in the United States is going to accept them when they get here, and the name and phone number of that person. So I have been the named person and phone number that asylum seekers have had on their packets, right? So this is how it has to happen. So they have that information, but that person might be in Chicago or Boston or LA, and they're standing in Del Rio or, Yuma, Arizona. And they're like, and you hear them say to ask Border Patrol agents, like, how far is that? Can we walk? Like, no, you can't walk to Boston. Well, technically you could, but that's going to take you a year, and there's nowhere to stay.
Very Forrest Gump style.
Yeah, Forrest Gump style. So you can't do this. So then somebody has to help get these people that Border Patrol has said, okay, you can be in the country, but now you're no longer our problem. So they dump them at these gas stations, and they're standing there like calling the phone number. And sometimes they speak English, sometimes they don't. It's just wild. So anyway, people put together these organizations to support this, all on their own. No funding from the federal government, no funding from Border Patrol, no funding from the city. In Del Rio, get a load of this, Del Rio, Texas, where the Valverde Humanitarian Coalition is. And you can go to our YouTube channel for Vote Common Good and watch us when we're there, when they pull up and drop off about 30 asylum seekers, and Tiffany Burrows has to process them in. They're in a facility. Well, the city has asked Tiffany and this other pastor to put together an organization to solve this problem, because the city doesn't want to pay for it. Border Patrol is not going to pay for it, but you have hundreds and hundreds of asylum seekers that the cartel is pushing into Del Rio. And they're like, they can't live on the streets. They can't just sit here for 3 days. Of course not. So Tiffany has to step up. So the city asks her to do it. Then they find a facility that's owned by the city of Del Rio that they then have to rent from the city. The city doesn't give it to them. They rent it to them. But the building had repairs that had to be done before occupancy permit could be given for the building. And they made the Valverde Humanitarian Coalition pay for the repairs on the building that they're renting to them, so they can run an organization to solve the problem that helps the city.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just finish this one thought. It is insane that the cities and federal government are putting on the backs of small nonprofits our immigration process. It is absolutely wrong, and we should be doing something about it. And we should get the government off the backs of the nonprofits and tell the government to do its job and fund a minimal amount to help people. Look, if these small nonprofits that have to raise money all on their own can pay for this, it's not all that expensive to pay $200 to help somebody get to the airport. It's crazy. It's just so wild. So you should totally come with us sometimes. I'm telling you, you get down there and you're just like, this is it's heroic what the migrants are doing. It's heroic what the nonprofits are doing. And it's utterly pathetic what the U.S. government does about this. It's just ridiculous. They drive around in these trucks and drones and keeping all the people out and all this nonsense. And then it's crazy.
Yeah. Why do you want people to come down there? Like, you mentioned a few things, but what do you hope for people to take away? I mean, I could just, so I'm planning to go in May on, I think when
May 9 through 12,
you've got the trip planned for, Arizona, but, I mean, what do you want people to see? Because, I mean, people would often say, and I've heard this too, like, oh, you're going to go to the border. It must be like really dangerous. And then like number two, it's all of these nonprofits are helping to take care of the mess that the government hasn't worked out. So, I mean, what do you hope that people take away if they, actually go down to the border?
If you want to fall in love with America or fall in love again, go to the U.S.-Mexico border and interact with the people who are coming in the country and those who are helping them come in the country. It's so great. If you want to be frustrated by the United States of America, pay attention to what U.S. Customs and Border Patrol is doing and the policies. And look, and we're talking about the policy. I'm talking about the policies under the Biden administration. The policies under the Trump administration were even worse. But it's ridiculous what we do there. But if you want to fall in love with the whole notion of this country and you want to see the most beautiful places in the country, it's stunning. I mean, for the eclipse, I went down to Eagle Pass, Texas on the border, stood in the Rio Grande River while the eclipse was happening, right between countries. It is stunning. And then if you want to just fall in love with Mexico, come into these little Mexican towns on the other side. It's a little creepy that they're run by drug cartels because they don't feel like it. They don't feel dangerous. Most of them. Sometimes there's some violence between cartels and towns, and they're not safe.
That's how they trick you. That's right. Make you feel comfortable.
Just filling you up with all those street tacos and all that great music and all the dancing and all the fun. And
here's taco. And here's some tequila.
I mean, it is just, and then you see the ingenuity of Americans. You see the bravery of migrants. I mean, you start hearing these stories about where people have come and what they're doing. And it's not like they're just coming here to come to, get to Disneyland and fulfill the American dream and, have a 2.5 car garage. These are people who are like, I was going to die or my child was taken by the cartels in my town. We had to go, or I'm a political asylum seeker. And I had to get out of and then they had to travel 3,000 miles through Central America and Mexico to get to this border. And then you meet them and you're just like, I would hire you for anything. These people are brave and honoring and tough and caring. It's simply remarkable. If you wanted to have the greatest workforce that you could get, you'd go down and be recruiting at these places. So I'll tell you,
I could use some sewers in my shop.
But you can't, right? Because the United States of America grants 647,000 work visas a year for new people to come in the country, and that's it. 640,000. There are 350 million people in the United States. 600,000 work visas. And only 47,000 of them can go to any one country. We have a quota system about work visas. So only 7% of all the work visas can go to any single country, which is 47,000 in 2022. 47,000 work visas. So only 47,000 people from any one country, it makes absolutely no sense, right? Can come in the country. So it's this little teeny drip, drip, drip. And then asylum seekers come in the country, and then they're told part of their deal to be an asylum seeker rather than on a work visa. An asylum seeker is, you guessed it, you can't work. Then they tell them they can't work.
Mm-hmm.
No,
that doesn't make any sense.
So then the rules are you can come in because your life is at risk or you're an asylum seeker, but you can't work. And then people complain that you're on the public dole. And if you're not on the public dole and you're working, then they complain that you're taking American jobs. Somehow Republicans are convinced that expanding the economy is the best way to grow the economy, but not if it means you just have more people. Somehow expanding the economy doesn't include having more people. I mean, my argument is bring in 3 million migrants a year, which is still going to be less than 1% of the U.S. population, right? Still less. It seems like a lot, but, it's a big country, mostly empty, plenty of room, plenty of jobs, and build the economy, build whole small towns. I think there should be a movement of 50 new towns between 50 and 500,000 people started in the next, 5 years. And every state should be starting a new town. And I know where you can get the steel because it's right on the U.S.-Mexico border. Take that wall down. Bring it on over, and so anyway, if you're ingenuity, if you have ingenuity in your mind, if you have creativity, you come to the border and you're just like, oh, this is incredible. It's so rich. It's so good. The people, it's just so fabulous. And I know people think exactly what you said, Nick, which is, oh, wow, you're going to the border. Be careful. I mean, a number of times people have told me to be careful, and I'll often joke like, look, it's far more dangerous driving to the border than it is being at the border. I promise you, like, our U.S. roads are dangerous. And that's just statistically true. There's less crime in U.S.-Mexico borders than other places in the country. It's just all the things that you've heard about it, if it's been danger or whatever, is just not true.
Yeah, I want to dig into that for a second here. So, just a few weeks ago, Shawn, I don't know if you know this, but you maybe, President Trump was in town in Grand Rapids holding a rally. And there was a rally, and he was talking about a sad situation where a young woman named Ruby Garcia was allegedly murdered by an illegal immigrant. He had, I'm trying to recall the story, is that he had come into the country when he was a child, but then he was deported. I think somewhere in his adult years or teens, but then he found his way back into the United States and into Michigan, and then this is where this tragic event happened. So as the former president arrives in town, he holds this rally. And local media, the local conservative media is all around it, and they're hyping it up. And then the narrative is that this alleged murder is a prime example of quote unquote migrant crime. And it was on the local conservative radio show where the host was saying this migrant crime is an epidemic. And immediately I was like, okay, I know, like in the national news, there have been kind of like these spots, and I could probably pinpoint it. Number one here in Grand Rapids, another place down south, and another elsewhere. But surely not a pandemic. So Doug, the question is like, what is, how do you explain to people that what's going on in terms of this quote unquote migrant crime?
Statistics can often be helpful, and the statistics tell us that people who are in the country, the United States of America, who were not born in this country, either they came with authorization or they came into the country without authorization, they snuck in, commit less crime than people born in the United States by huge numbers.
But we aren't talking about who already lives here, who's real citizens, all right? We're not talking about that
There
side.
were 21,000 murders in 2022. We're talking about one. If there's an epidemic of crime, the majority of that, the almost all of that is committed by people who are born in the United States. Spend a little time in prisons. I'd love to come with me. I've spent time on death row, spent time in many prisons. Ask people where their birth certificates say they were born. It's in the United States. So yeah, look, this is what's just classic demagoguery, right? That's what Trump is doing and saying, and I've had people say to me with full-throated honesty, well, we have to deal with people that are in the United States. Why would we want even one more if we can prevent it? This is the thinking, right? They're like, well, if we don't have any migrants, then we've at least cut down on the number of murders that have happened by migrants or crime by migrants. We can't get rid of all the people that are in the country,
we can focus on our own.
but we can clear out that. Like, so that's an argument that people really hold, sincerely, and think that's the way. I think there's a lot of reasons that doesn't make sense. I won't even go into them. I think somebody just sit with that for a while and ask yourself that question. But yeah, this is what they want to tell. They're trying to contrast because the Republican Party, as it's run by Donald Trump, wants to say that migrants are a problem. They're not a solution. They're a flaw, not a feature of America. He wants it to be a certain kind of America. It's a blood and soil argument. This is the same thing that goes back to Charlottesville. It's the whole deal. And it's not just they want it to be white. White isn't some people only want it to be white, but a lot of people don't want it to be, they want it to be American. And they feel these people are not American. I don't know how that lands on Melania, but they don't want that bloodstream to be polluted by those people. I don't know how that lands on Barron, but that seems like a good family conversation. So
I was kind of wondering, with immigration and everything, is there a big difference between immigrating over the border and immigrating by getting a flight into America?
Mm-hmm. Well, you can't get on a flight without having a work permit already issued and in hand. So, and you can't come to you can't seek asylum from outside of the United States. You have to be touching U.S. soil. So if you're an asylum seeker, you can't do that in another country and then fly in. You have to walk up to the border or get here somehow. The old 80s movie where the Russian agent, the Russian chess player then gets on U.S. soil and then asks for asylum, that kind of thing. Because those are the rules. And here's the thing about all this. We've just made a bunch of rules about immigration. We've made quota rules, and people act as if they act as if they work, and then they act as if you can't do anything about them because, it's the rule. Like, no, we made the rules. We can change the rules anytime we want. It's what this is what Congress does. They make laws, they amend laws, they change laws. They're lawmakers. That is what they do. So they can change these laws.
It's their job.
They can change these laws anytime they want. And there's bills that are in front of Congress. A congressperson named Veronica Escobar is the author of the best version. Because what happens when you start talking about immigration in America, there ends up being too big. There ends up being a bit of a divide. One is the people who are already in the country. What do we do with dreamers? What do we do with a thing called TPC? These are people that already have work visas and they're going to expire. Like, what do we do with the workers that are in the United States now who were born outside of this country, but now they're in the United States? How do we manage that? And a lot of people have expiring work visas. They might have a work visa that's going to be for 15 years. Then what are they going to do, right? So we have to update that system. There's a lot of energy around that side of the aisle. What do we do about those currently in the country? Republicans want to deport them. It is just insane. And Democrats want to make sure they're legally protected to be here. That's different than the border practices and who can come in, from right now going forward. That's a different set of questions run by a different set of policies. So there's a lot of energy around the people already in the country and not a lot of energy around border practice. And there's even inside the community of people who work on these issues, real divides. Those of us who are real border advocates are not always cheered on by the people who work with immigration people that are in the country. Sometimes in the social justice network stuff, there's some tension in that. So it's just really, really complicated. The United States, I think, offers 97 different visas. So if you even want to apply for a visa to come to the United States, it's incredibly expensive and incredibly complicated. And almost always requires some kind of legal support to be able to do it. So it's just really a mess. And it's not only here in the United States, it's all over the world. There's been a movement for countries. I think when Ronald Reagan went and stood in Germany and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," right? I think there were like 7 countries that had walls separating them from their neighbors. And now there's like 59 or 100 or something, some crazy amount. Like, since the tear down this wall, countries have built more walls since that period of like open the countries, bring Germany back together. People have been closing countries. It's been a worldwide movement run by the same philosophies that infused the United States Make America Great Again movement. It's all the same stuff. It's Orban and all the our country alone and no international alliances. Like, that's just a big movement that's been afoot for the last 20 years or so.
When you've had these border experiences, have you had elected officials come along with you, or even, when it was along the bike ride, did elected officials come with you, and like, what did they learn? What was their biggest takeaway, and what did they want to implement to make change?
Most of them, yes, we have. And in fact, in this one we're doing in May, we're targeting it specifically to recruit lawmakers and those running for office. So we really, really want that, and are so excited about the fact that it's going to be happening. But those who have come, they don't know anything about this. Like, this is the thing I've learned about knowing so many lawmakers at the high federal level and the state levels. Just because you become a lawmaker, no one downloads in your brain everything you need to know. Like, this is just as foreign to them after they're elected to office as it was before. And there's nobody helping them. There's nobody, like, very rarely is somebody coming in like, "Hey, let me give you the landscape of this." So people they just come in really green and not knowing what's going on. And the thing that happens to lawmakers happens to everyone. They just say, "Wow, this is so different than I thought." Sometimes it's worse, but most of the time they're like, "It's just so different. Why did I have in my mind that it was going to be like this?" And that's a work we ask people to do. Like, I don't know, start thinking about that. When I first rode on a boat on the Rio Grande River in McAllen, Texas, I even thought it was going to be dangerous, because I'd seen so much footage of governors, Republican governors with flak jackets on and armed guards around them. I thought, okay, the border's one thing, but we start getting down to McAllen, Texas, and we're on the Rio Grande River. And then you can see it in our documentary. Then we're on this with a guy who runs a pleasure boat cruise up and down the river. He's done it for 40 years. He moved to that part of the Texas. And he's like, "I wouldn't be running a evening boat cruise here if this was dangerous." He said, "These people come down here, they shoot this footage. He said they do it right over there, and and they point their cameras out to the river, and they're standing there flak. And behind them, literally, Nick, are Mexican families having picnics on tables with Coca-Cola banners hanging over them. It's as beautiful, serene, beautiful river as you can get." And I was like, so that little piece of the documentary, which people can see at the We the People ride.org website, is amazing. And it just happens over and over and over. We're like, wow, stuff I was thinking is just not what they said.
Yeah, Doug, we got about 5 more minutes left, but I want to pull on that little thread right there, because I can just hear, people saying like, "Well, okay, you were not going to the right places. Yeah. You're being, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but you're being selective in where you're going, and you're not seeing where the actual chaos is." So like, but what you're saying is that is not the case again and again and again as you travel along. You're just not going to pop up and see mass chaos every single day.
If you're seeing chaos at the U.S.-Mexico border, it's because the drug cartels want there to be chaos at the U.S.-Mexico border. Border Patrol tells us that. People who live in the towns tell us that. Why does it surge in some places? It's currently in Yuma, Arizona. A little while ago, it was in Eagle Pass, Texas. It was in Del Rio. Well, I mean, there's a lot of explanations for this, and people that know basically say this. The drug cartels decide where they want to cause a bunch of disturbance so that U.S. Customs and Border Patrol will move all their agents over there, will surge their response so they can do other things at other parts of the border. So because because it's so hard to come in the country legally, because it's so arduous to come in the country and go back out for work purposes or to reunite with your families, we've created a bottleneck that then empowers the drug cartels to make money and control it on the Mexico side. And we're playing a game of cat and mouse, and the U.S. isn't in control of that game.
Finally, Doug, how do we get people down into these border experiences? Are you going to be doing more bicycle rides? But
Well, we're going
what's your
in
pitch to
May.
people?
We're
How to
going
get
in
people
May,
down
but-
to these experiences?
Yeah, we're going in May 9th through the 12th in Arizona, and we're going to be going into Mexico. You don't need a passport. You need a driver's license to be able to do it. Isn't that interesting? You can go into Mexico, come back out without a passport. Open borders, apparently.
That effect. Okay.
Is that a fact?
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, if you have a passport, bring it. Makes things, 4 seconds easier.
Super easy.
We're not going to be biking on these trips. We might do another bike trip in the future. But we're going May 9th through the 12th. We'd love to have people come. Basically, you pay for your housing, chip in a little bit on the transportation, and the rest of it we cover. Then we're going to do it again in the early fall over in Texas. And so you can go to votecommongood.com and see all the details about all of that and get signed up and the rest. And we'd love to have people come and join us. You fly into Tucson, or you have to get yourself to Tucson, Arizona, to start the one in May. And then you'd get yourself to San Antonio, Texas, to start the one in the fall. And we'll pick you up from there and then take you on a joyride, but not on a bicycle.
Well, I can't wait to get down there. I'm coming down May 9. I've been waiting to come down there. And,
I know you've tried to come twice.
This all with you and the rest. What's that?
It could be a little complicated.
yeah,
you
twice.
You tried twice, yeah.
Third time's a charm.
I hope.
So if there's any listeners out there in West Michigan and want to join me with that, reach out. Love to connect, and we'll have a really good time. So Shawn is getting himself back together. I think we've had some internet problems or whatever. Yeah. But we're going to wrap it up here.
And Shawn is wearing a Yellowstone TV show Dutton Ranch t-shirt. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm a fan of that show. Yeah, it sounds hollow now.
Yeah, you sound you're not quite there.
Doesn't sound like that big beautiful.
But we're gonna wrap it anyways.
SM7B is working.
Yeah. Well, hey Doug, we thank you for your time this morning.
Well, I thank you for your service.
And man, I think Shawn and I are gonna wrap things up.
See ya.
What's that?
See ya. I'm gonna go make a run for the border. I might actually do that. I might go to Taco Bell today. Okay.
Oh, all right. Good luck with that. I don't know if that's always a great choice, but
no,
good luck.
Never is. Never once.
See you later,
never
Doug.
once did I go to Taco Bell and then say to myself, there was a choice I was proud of. I mean, it's like,
you'll be regretting it later.
Oh, that wasn't so bad. Or, oh, that was really bad. But, or I kind of liked it, but I've never been proud of it.
Go find a pancake house. I'm sure you can find one. You know where they are.
Oh, I do.
Get those pancakes.
But I couldn't go this morning because I had to do this podcast, and now the line's going to be out the door.
Yeah, well, nobody made you do this podcast, so that's on you.
All right. Can I just hit leave, or is that going to mess up the uploading?
I think you can just exit out because Shawn and I will still record like a few more minutes, so we'll be good.
Goodbye.
Great question, though.
Hey, stay warm and be well fed. The Bible says.
Yeah, I am. All right, Shawn. Don't worry about getting too set up for this because I think I'll just land the plane here. What Boy, so I want to thank Doug again for coming on and talking about immigration and the border experience. Again, I'm serious. If anybody wants to join, there's still time to do that. Get your plane ticket, and perhaps we could do this together. So thanks for joining this Common Good conversation with Shawn and I and Doug, and we'd love to hear from you. Was this conversation helpful? What did you think about it? If you have any questions or if you'd like to be a guest on the program, you can send those to votecommongood.wm@gmail.com. Till next time, friends, be the common good in West Michigan. Grace and peace.